The Mafia's Nigerian Queen. No School, No Fear. Season 1. The Girl They Threw Away. She was born Amaka Nwosu, daughter of a brilliant Nigerian father and a fearless Nigerian mother. Her father had the mind of a detective, the kind of man who could study a room for 2 minutes and know who was lying, who was afraid, and who was hiding something. Her mother had the mind of a business queen, the kind of woman who could take one small opportunity and turn it into money, respect, and power. Amaka inherited both. She inherited her father's sharp eyes. She inherited her mother's business instinct. She inherited their courage, their intelligence, and their fighting spirit. But when her parents died, everything beautiful in her life was taken from her. The same people who were supposed to love her, protect her, cherish her, and raise her became the people who broke her. They denied her school. They denied her food. They denied her kindness. They treated her like a servant in the house, where she should have been treated like family. When the suffering became too much, Amaka ran away. She had no money, no education, no family, no protector, no one. But life did not know what kind of child it had thrown into the fire. The street became her classroom. Hunger became her teacher. Pain became her training. Betrayal sharpened her mind. Survival built her courage. She learned how to read people before she learned how to read books. She learned how to calculate danger before she learned how to calculate profit. She learned how to fight because no one was coming to save her. Years later, the little girl they threw away becomes the hidden owner of one of the largest private companies in the world, Nwosu Crown International. The world does not know her face. Powerful men know only her signature. Governments know her company. Criminals fear her intelligence network. Business leaders whisper about the mysterious owner of Nwosu Crown, never knowing that the person behind the empire is a Nigerian woman who was once denied school and told she would become nothing. Then, Amaka enters South Korea for a business deal and crosses paths with 2 powerful men, Kang Tae-jun, a feared Korean mafia king, and Detective Seo Min-jae, the brilliant detective determined to bring him down. Tae-jun rules the underworld with silence, discipline, and danger. Min-jae fights from the side of the law, but he is slowly learning that the law does not always reach the people who deserve punishment. When Amaka saves Tae-jun from a deadly assassination, she becomes the mystery neither man can ignore. The Mafia king wants to know who she is. The detective wants to know what she is hiding. Amaka only wants the truth about the company name that connects Korea to the death of her parents. By the end of Season 1, the girl who was denied a future returns home as a queen. The people who destroyed her childhood do not recognize her at first. But when they finally do, it is too late. They are the ones begging now. Episode 1. The Loved Child. Amaka Nwosu was not born into suffering. Before pain knew her name, she was loved. She grew up in Nigeria with her father, Chike Nwosu, and her mother, Adaeze Nwosu. Their home was not the richest house in the world, but it had warmth, laughter, discipline, and dreams. Chike was a man with calm eyes and a dangerous mind. He did not need to shout to command respect. He could sit quietly in a room and notice everything others missed. He noticed shaking fingers, false smiles, nervous breathing, and the difference between silence and guilt. Amaka loved sitting beside him when he repaired old radios or read documents. Chike did not speak to her like she was an ordinary child. He spoke to her like her mind mattered. One evening, a man came to their house to discuss a business issue with Adaeze. After he left, Chike looked at young Amaka and asked her what she noticed. Amaka was only a child, but she answered carefully. She said the man smiled too much, but his hands kept touching his pocket. She said he drank water even though he was not thirsty. She said he looked at the door whenever her mother mentioned payment. Chike smiled with pride. He told her that people's mouths could lie, but their bodies usually confessed first. Amaka did not fully understand how important that lesson would become, but she kept it inside her heart. Her mother, Adaeze, taught her differently. Adaeze was elegant, intelligent, and strong in a way that did not need noise. She traded, invested, negotiated, and understood business like breathing. When she entered a market, sellers straightened themselves, not because they feared her, but because they knew she could not be easily cheated. Adaeze took Amaka with her whenever she could. She showed her how prices moved, how desperation changed people's voices, how greed made people careless, and how money was not just something to spend, but something to study. She told Amaka that a woman must never be ashamed of intelligence. One afternoon, after Adaeze finished a successful negotiation, Amaka asked how she knew the seller was hiding something. Adaeze held her daughter's hand and told her that a seller who lowered his price too quickly was either desperate or dangerous. Then she touched Amaka's forehead gently and said her mind was a gift. Amaka was surrounded by lessons, but they did not feel like school. They felt like love. At night, Chike sometimes told her stories about investigations he had helped solve. Some were about stolen land. Some were about missing money. Some were about families betrayed by people they trusted. Adaeze would shake her head and remind him not to fill their daughter's head with too much darkness. Chike would laugh and say Amaka was born with sharp eyes, and sharp eyes must be trained. But slowly, the warmth in their home began to change. Chike started coming home late. Adaeze began locking documents in a wooden box beneath their bed. Some nights, they whispered when they thought Amaka was asleep. Amaka heard enough to know something was wrong, but not enough to understand it. She heard names. She heard warnings. She heard her mother say the people involved were too powerful. She heard her father say staying silent would make them part of the crime. One name appeared more than once: Black Han River Holdings. Amaka did not know what it meant. She only remembered the way her mother's voice became low whenever the name was spoken. A few days later, her parents traveled for a meeting and never returned alive. The adults said it was an accident. At the burial, Amaka stood between relatives who cried loudly and strangers who watched too quietly. Her small hands held her mother's bracelet. Her father's old pen was hidden in her dress pocket. She was too young to challenge anyone, but she was not too young to notice. Her uncle, Emeka Nwosu, did not cry like a man who had lost a brother. He watched the house keys more than the coffin. Her aunt Ngozi whispered with women, but kept looking toward Adaeze's locked room. A man in dark glasses stood far from the crowd, watching the burial like he came to confirm something, not mourn someone. During the prayers, Amaka saw one of Uncle Emeka's friends slip into the house. When he came out, he carried nothing visible, but his shirt looked heavier on one side. Amaka stared at him until he looked away. After the burial, people gathered around Uncle Emeka and praised him because he announced that he would take Amaka in. He placed his hand on her shoulder in front of everyone and said she was family. He said Chike's daughter would never suffer as long as he was alive. The women thanked him. The men called him honorable. Some people cried again. Amaka looked up at him, wanting to believe him. That night, she entered Uncle Emeka's house with her small bag. The moment the visitors left, Auntie Ngozi's face changed. The softness she showed in public disappeared. She looked Amaka up and down, as if the child were a burden dropped at her door. She told Amaka not to expect special treatment. She said this was not her father's house. She said tears would not bring dead people back. She pointed to a thin mat near the kitchen and told her that was where she would sleep. Amaka lay on the mat that night, holding her mother's bracelet and her father's pen close to her chest. The house was full of people, but she had never felt more alone. For the first time, she whispered for her mother, and no one answered. Episode 2, The House Without Love. At first, Amaka believed grief had made Auntie Ngozi cold. She believed Uncle Emeka was busy and would soon remember his promise. She believed that if she worked hard, behaved well, and caused no trouble, they would love her. She was wrong. The house became a prison without bars. Amaka woke before sunrise to sweep the compound, wash plates, fetch water, and prepare food. Her cousins slept until their mother woke them gently for school. They wore clean uniforms, polished shoes, and carried bags full of books. Amaka stood by the doorway, watching them leave every morning with a hunger that had nothing to do with food. She wanted school the way thirsty people wanted water. One morning, she asked Uncle Emeka when she would start school again. He did not even look up from his tea. He told her there was no money for useless things. Later that same day, he gave his son money for a new school bag and extra lesson fees. Amaka understood the answer without needing it repeated. There was money, just not for her. Her cousins began to treat her the way their parents treated her. They called her house girl. They ordered her around. They mocked the way she tried to read old papers. One cousin, Chinonso, enjoyed humiliating her most. He would wave his school books in her face and ask her to pronounce words he knew she did not know. When she failed, he laughed and told her even her dead parents could not save her from being useless. Amaka did not fight back. Not yet. At night, when the house slept, she collected torn notebooks from the trash. She hid them under her mat and traced letters with her fingers. She remembered her mother telling her that her mind was a gift. She remembered her father telling her to watch what people hid. So she watched. She listened. She learned in secret. Auntie Ngozi caught her one night. She dragged the notebook from beneath Amaka's mat and stared at it like it was an insult. Amaka begged her not to tear it. That only made Ngozi angrier. She ripped the pages slowly, one after another, making sure Amaka watched. She told Amaka that school was not for girls who had no parents to pay for it. She said Amaka should stop pretending she was special. She said Adaeze had been proud too, and pride did not stop death from finding her. That sentence wounded Amaka deeper than the slap that followed. But something else was happening inside her. Every cruelty that was meant to empty her began to sharpen her instead. When Auntie Ngozi sent her to the market, Amaka watched sellers the way Adaeze had taught her. She saw who was desperate to sell before rain came. She noticed which tomatoes were fresh and which ones had been arranged to hide rot. She bargained carefully and returned with more food than Ngozi expected, plus extra change. Instead of being praised, she was accused of stealing. Amaka tried to explain that she had negotiated well, but Ngozi slapped her and said a child like her could not be smarter than adults. Amaka realized then that in that house, even her intelligence was an offense. Uncle Emeka was not always loud, but his silence was cruel. When Ngozi shouted, he ignored it. When Amaka limped, he looked away. When visitors came, he placed a hand on Amaka's shoulder and pretended she was cared for. When visitors left, he forgot she existed. The worst part was that Amaka still wanted him to choose her. She still hoped that one day he would say her father's name with love and remember she was his brother's child. But hope became dangerous. One night, Amaka was sent to bring water from the backyard. As she passed Uncle Emeka's study, she heard voices. He was speaking with a man she had seen once at her parents' burial. The man asked about documents. Uncle Emeka told him the girl knew nothing. He said Amaka could not even go to school, so she would never understand what her parents left behind. The man said the name again. Black Han River Holdings. Amaka froze. Her hand tightened around the bucket handle. She did not understand the full meaning, but she knew enough to be afraid. Her parents' documents had not disappeared by accident. Her uncle was hiding something. The people around her were not only cruel, they were connected to the mystery that swallowed her parents. That night, Amaka did not sleep. She lay on her mat in the dark, listening to the house breathe. For the first time, she understood that they were not just denying her school because they were wicked. They were denying her knowledge because knowledge could make her dangerous. And deep inside, a quiet voice rose in her. One day, I will know everything. Episode 3. The Night She Ran. The beating that changed Amaka's life began with missing money. Auntie Ngozi claimed that money had disappeared from her room. She searched the house loudly, throwing clothes, opening drawers, and accusing everyone with her eyes. But when her gaze landed on Amaka, the search ended. Amaka said she did not take it. Ngozi slapped her before the sentence finished. Uncle Emeka came out of his room, listened for only a few seconds, and decided Amaka was guilty, because that was easier than questioning his own children. Amaka begged them to search properly. She promised she had touched nothing. But Ngozi said poor children always stole. She said suffering had made Amaka greedy. She called her ungrateful and cursed. Later, Amaka found the missing money hidden inside Chinonso's school bag. Her hands shook when she brought it to Ngozi. She thought the truth would protect her. It did not. Ngozi stared at the money, then at her son, then back at Amaka. Her face hardened with shame, and because she could not punish her own child, she punished Amaka for exposing him. She accused Amaka of planting the money there. That day, something inside Amaka finally stopped begging. She was beaten until her body ached too deeply for tears. Uncle Emeka watched from the doorway and told her that punishment would teach her. Chinonso stood behind his mother, silent and guilty, but not brave enough to speak. That evening, Amaka sat outside behind the house. Rain clouds gathered. Her arms hurt. Her lips were swollen. Her stomach was empty because Ngozi had refused to let her eat. She looked at the sky and thought about her parents. She remembered her father's laugh. She remembered her mother's hands. She remembered being called brilliant. She remembered being loved. Then she looked at the house behind her and understood that if she stayed, she would not only lose her body, she would lose her mind. She would begin to believe what they called her. She would shrink until even her own memories became unsure. That night, the rain began. Amaka waited until everyone slept. She moved quietly because pain had taught her silence. She took her mother's bracelet, her father's pen, and the torn photograph she kept hidden inside an old cloth. Then she remembered Uncle Emeka's study. She knew where he kept the old boxes. Her heart beat so loudly she feared it would wake the house. She slipped into the study and searched with trembling hands. Most of the papers meant nothing to her. Legal words, land names, company seals, signatures. She could not read fast enough, and fear made the letters swim. Then she saw the name, Black Han River Holdings. It was on a folded document with her father's handwriting on the side. Before she could take the whole file, she heard movement in the hallway. She tore off the corner with the company name and hid it inside her dress. Then she ran. She did not take shoes strong enough for the road. She did not take food. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not stay. The rain covered her footsteps. By morning, the city had swallowed her. Amaka spent her first day as a runaway, hungry and terrified. The world outside was not kind. People looked through her. Some chased her away. Some men stared too long. She learned quickly that being alone as a young girl was dangerous. That night, she slept under a wooden market table. curled around her small bundle. Her clothes were damp, her stomach twisted with hunger. Rats moved nearby. Loud voices echoed from far away. She wanted to cry, but she was too tired. Instead, she held her mother's bracelet and whispered that she was sorry. She was sorry she had run. She was sorry she had not been strong enough to stay. She was sorry she could not understand the documents. She was sorry she was still only a child. But as the market slowly became quiet, another thought entered her heart. She had left the house alive. For the first time since her parents died, no one owned her mourning. She had nothing, but the nothing was hers. Episode 4. The street became her school. The street did not welcome Amaka. It tested her. Her first weeks were full of hunger. She learned which market women threw away bruised fruit at closing time. She learned which public taps still ran at night. She learned where to sleep when rain came, and which places to avoid when men gathered to drink. She also learned that pity was unreliable. Some people gave food once and cursed her the next day. Some called her poor thing, but never helped. Some offered help with eyes that warned her to run. So Amaka began to depend on the one thing no one had taken from her: observation. She watched everything. A boy who stole from bags always coughed before moving. A driver who overcharged passengers never looked them in the eye. A woman selling bad fish shouted louder than the others to distract from the smell. A man who pretended to be kind to street girls always stood too close. The lessons her father taught her became survival. The lessons her mother taught her became strategy. One afternoon, a market woman named Mama BC screamed that her money bag had been stolen. The crowd grabbed a hungry boy nearby and accused him. The boy cried and denied it, but no one cared. Amaka watched from beside a stall, her body tense. The boy was afraid, but his fear was messy and confused. Another man nearby was calm, too calm. He kept adjusting his shirt and looking toward a stack of crates. Amaka followed him quietly. Behind the crates, she found the money bag hidden beneath empty sacks. When she returned it, the crowd went silent. Mama BC stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. She asked how Amaka knew. Amaka said the innocent boy was crying because he was trapped, but the guilty man was already planning his escape. Mama BC gave her food and a little money. It was the first time Amaka earned something with her mind. After that, traders started calling her when small things went wrong. At first, they did it as a joke. They asked the little runaway to find missing slippers, stolen baskets, dishonest delivery boys. But Amaka solved more problems than they expected. She remembered faces. She followed patterns. She asked simple questions that made liars nervous. Still, she carried shame because she could not read properly. That shame led her to a small bookshop owned by Mama Ifeoma, a widow with kind eyes and a voice that could become firm when needed. Amaka stood outside the shop every evening, staring at books through the window like they were locked doors. One day, Mama Ifeoma came outside and asked why she stared at books as if they had offended her. Amaka answered honestly. She said they had what people refused to give her. Mama Ifeoma asked if she could read. Amaka lied and said yes. Mama Ifeoma handed her a small book and asked her to read one sentence. Amaka tried. The words broke apart in her mouth. Her face burned with humiliation. She expected laughter. Instead, Mama Ifeoma took the book gently and told her that not knowing was not a crime. Refusing to learn was the real shame. From that evening, Amaka began visiting the bookshop after the market closed. Mama Ifeoma taught her letters again, then words, then sentences. She taught her numbers, receipts, dates, names, and signatures. She taught her how to hold a pen without fear. She taught her that reading slowly did not mean thinking slowly. Amaka worked during the day and learned at night. Sometimes she fell asleep over the book. Sometimes tears dropped on the page because she remembered Auntie and Ngozi tearing her notebook. Mama Ifeoma never mocked her. She simply wiped the page and told her to continue. The first time Amaka read a full paragraph by herself, she cried. Mama Ifeoma asked why. Amaka said she thought her brain had died in that house. Mama Ifeoma held her and told her that her brain had not died. It had only been waiting for light. For the first time since her parents' death, Amaka allowed someone to touch her without flinching. But the street was not finished training her. A few nights later, 2 men cornered a younger girl behind the market. People heard the girl crying, but most looked away. Amaka could not. Something in the sound reminded her of every night she had begged silently for someone to come. She picked up a piece of wood and attacked. She was brave, but bravery was not training. One man knocked her down hard. She got up again. He hit her again. She got up again. Before the men could hurt her badly, an older man stepped in. His name was Baba Stone, a retired fighter with a damaged knee and a voice like gravel. He chased the men away and later told Amaka that courage without training would bury her early. When Amaka said she had no home to return to, Baba Stone looked at her for a long time. Then he told her to survive until she built one. Episode 5. Small Fire. Baba Stone did not train Amaka softly. He trained her before sunrise, behind an abandoned building near the market. He made her run until her lungs burned. He taught her how to stand, how to breathe, how to keep her hands up, how to fall without breaking, and how to strike only when necessary. Amaka wanted to learn how to fight because she was angry. Baba Stone taught her that anger could start a fight, but discipline kept a person alive. He told her not every insult deserved a response. Not every enemy deserved her energy. Not every battle was wisdom. At first, she hated that lesson. She had swallowed too much pain to enjoy patience. But over time, she understood. The most dangerous person was not the loudest person in the room. It was the one who could wait. During the day, Amaka continued helping traders. At night, she learned from Mama Ifeoma. Before dawn, she trained with Baba Stone. She was still young, still poor, still carrying wounds, but she was no longer helpless. The market people began to call her Small Fire. The name started after Amaka caught a warehouse boy stealing goods from 3 women who sold fabric. The boy had been moving small bundles every Friday, hiding them inside sacks of spoiled produce. The women thought they were losing money because of bad accounting. Amaka saw the pattern and exposed him. One trader laughed and said the girl was small, but she burned anybody who touched her wrongly. Small Fire stayed. Amaka did not smile when she first heard it, but secretly, the name gave her strength. In her uncle's house, they had called her useless. In the market, people called her Fire. The first real idea for her future company came from a simple problem: fear. The traders were afraid every day. They feared stolen goods, dishonest drivers, fake receipts, police harassment, bad storage, and violent boys who collected illegal fees. Rich businesses had security. Poor traders had prayers. Amaka watched this and saw an opportunity. She began writing names in a notebook Mama Ifeoma gave her. Her handwriting was rough, but her memory was perfect. She listed trusted drivers, dangerous routes, honest loaders, thieves, market troublemakers, and traders who paid on time. She learned who could move goods safely, who lied about delays, and which roads became dangerous after dark. At first, she helped one woman move goods safely from one market to another, then 2 women, then 5, then 10. She charged a small amount, not enough to make her rich, but enough to prove the idea worked. She called it Crown Safe Movement. It was not a company yet. It was barely even a business. It was a system built from street sense, memory, discipline, and the refusal to let poor people keep losing everything because no one protected them. Some people mocked her. Men asked who would trust a girl who had no school. Some drivers refused to take instructions from her. One man told her to go and find a husband instead of pretending to do business. Amaka did not argue with all of them. She let results answer. When goods protected by her system arrived safely, traders returned. When thieves realized her routes were harder to attack, they avoided them. When drivers discovered she kept records and remembered lies, they became careful. Amaka learned her first great business truth. People pay for peace of mind. One evening, after a long day, she sat with Mama Ifeoma in the bookshop, counting small notes. The amount was not large, but it was hers. Every coin represented a problem she had solved. Every payment represented someone who trusted her. Mama Ifeoma asked what she wanted the business to become. Amaka looked down at her father's pen beside the notebook. She said she wanted to build something no one could throw her out of. Baba Stone later asked her why she trained so hard, worked so hard, and studied until her eyes turned red. Amaka answered that one day, she would never beg anyone to choose her again. That night, she wrote 3 words on the first page of a fresh notebook. Nwosu Crown Services. She chose Nwosu because the people who tried to bury her parents' name would not succeed. She chose Crown because her mother once told her never to beg for a seat when she could build the table. Amaka did not know it yet, but the table had already started becoming a throne. Episode 6, The Business of Survival. Years passed, but Amaka did not grow away from her pain. She grew through it. She became a young woman with quiet eyes, a guarded heart, and a mind that never stopped working. She still had no formal schooling, no certificate, no classroom history, no graduation picture. But she had something many educated people around her lacked: the ability to see problems from the ground where people actually suffered. Her business expanded because she understood fear. Traders feared losing goods. Drivers feared robbery. Women feared being cheated. Small business owners feared police trouble. Families feared one bad loss could destroy everything. Amaka built services around those fears. Crown Safe movement became Nwosu Crown Services, then Nwosu Crown Logistics and Security. She hired carefully. Not everyone with a certificate impressed her. Not everyone without one earned her trust. She hired people who were hungry but disciplined, wounded but loyal, intelligent but ignored. Some were former street boys who needed structure. Some were widows who understood market life. Some were retired police officers who knew how criminals moved. Some were young women who had survived abuse and needed work that gave them dignity. Amaka paid fairly, but she demanded honesty. Betrayal was the one thing she could not tolerate. Her first serious betrayal came from Kelechi, a young man she rescued from the street and trusted with rude information. Kelechi smiled well, worked hard at first, and called Amaka his sister. But greed entered him quietly. He began selling delivery details to thieves. 3 shipments were attacked in 1 week. The traders blamed Amaka. Some shouted in her office. Some cried because the lost goods were bought with borrowed money. Amaka listened without defending herself. Their anger hurt her, but she knew trust once broken could not be repaired with excuses. She investigated the failure herself. She checked who knew each route. She compared the timing of the attacks. She asked drivers questions separately and listened for changes in their stories. She noticed Kelechi was too eager to blame others and too careful when giving his own movements. When she confronted him, he begged. He said he needed money. He said everyone was suffering. He said she should understand because she also came from nothing. That angered her more than the betrayal itself. Amaka told him poverty was not permission to sell people who trusted him. She removed him from the company and used her own savings to repay the affected traders slowly. It nearly destroyed her business, but it saved her name. From that moment, people knew Nwosu Crown stood on trust. Her next breakthrough came through Mrs. Okonkwo, a wealthy import business owner whose goods kept disappearing. Educated consultants had failed to solve the problem. One market woman recommended Amaka. Mrs. Okonkwo laughed when she saw her. She expected a man. She expected an older person. She expected someone with polished English and a foreign degree. Instead, she saw Amaka. Mrs. Okonkwo asked if Amaka was truly the investigator people were praising. Amaka calmly answered that she was not there to impress her. She was there to find her money. That answer earned her one chance. Amaka studied delivery records slowly. She read slower than the consultants, but she saw what they missed. The thefts happened only when a certain loading supervisor changed the schedule. The missing goods were always valuable, but easy to move quickly. The driver everyone blamed was careless but not guilty. Someone inside the family had access. The thief was Mrs. Okonkwo's nephew. The discovery broke Mrs. Okonkwo's heart, but it saved her business. She paid Amaka well and introduced her to bigger clients. That one case changed everything. Nwosu Crown began receiving contracts from medium-sized companies. Amaka moved from market protection to logistics security, then to warehouse monitoring, then to private investigations for businesses. She learned contracts from Mama Ifeoma and from lawyers she hired. At first, some lawyers tried to confuse her with big words. They assumed a woman without school would sign anything placed before her. One day, a businessman offered her a partnership contract designed to trap her. Everyone in the room spoke quickly, expecting her to pretend she understood. Amaka read slowly. The room grew impatient. One man smiled as if enjoying her struggle. Then Amaka placed her finger on a clause and asked why the agreement allowed them to take control of her company if one shipment was delayed by 24 hours. The room went silent. She looked at the smiling man and said she read slowly, not stupidly. That line followed her for years. Amaka reinvested every profit. She did not buy unnecessary luxury. She bought vehicles. She rented warehouses. She hired accountants. She paid for better security equipment. She studied maps. She learned which ports mattered, which roads connected trade routes, which dying companies owned valuable land, and which businessmen were drowning beneath public confidence. Her mother's business mind came alive in her. When she bought her first failing transport company, people laughed. They said she had wasted money. 6 months later, a government road expansion made the company's land and route licenses extremely valuable. Investors who mocked her came back with offers. Amaka refused most of them. She was no longer only surviving. She was building. At the end of the episode, she stood in front of a larger office with her company name newly mounted on the wall. Nwosu Crown International. She touched the sign with trembling fingers. For a moment, she was not the powerful young woman people respected. She was the hungry child under the market table, the servant on the kitchen mat, the girl tracing torn letters in the dark. She whispered to her parents that she had started. Episode 7. The Woman Nobody Sees. Nwosu Crown International grew faster than anyone expected because Amaka understood something powerful people often forgot. The world runs on invisible systems. Goods had to move, people had to be protected, information had to be verified, companies had to recover from crisis, money had to be followed, secrets had to be found. Amaka built Nwosu Crown around those systems. Within years, the company entered logistics, private security, emergency response, business intelligence, and corporate recovery. It became the company wealthy people called when police were too slow, when contracts were suspicious, when goods disappeared, when employees stole, when kidnappers threatened, or when business rivals set traps. But Amaka made one decision early. The world would not know her face. She had learned the power of being underestimated. She had learned how dangerous visibility could be for a woman with enemies. She allowed the public to believe Nwosu Crown International belonged to a mysterious board of investors. Some thought the owner was an old billionaire. Some thought it was a foreign group. Some thought AN Crown, the signature on major documents, was a man. Amaka let them believe whatever made them careless. In public, she appeared only as Anna Nwosu, a senior executive and strategic advisor. Even in that role, she was feared. She spoke little in meetings, but when she spoke, people listened. She could dismantle a proposal with one question. She could smell financial lies in clean presentations. She could read panic in men who wore expensive suits. Her leadership was strict, but not heartless. She funded schools secretly. She created scholarships for girls denied education. She built shelters for abused young women and safe houses for children running from violence. She employed people society had thrown away, but she did not romanticize suffering. She gave them training, structure, and responsibility. One day, her assistant found her standing outside one of the schools Nwosu Crown funded. Children were reciting lessons inside. A little girl at the front answered a question confidently, and the teacher praised her. Amaka watched through the window, unable to move. Her assistant asked if she was all right. Amaka said she liked seeing doors open, but the past was not finished with her. Uncle Emeka and Auntie Ngozi still lived in Nigeria, older now, but not wiser. Their public image remained respectable, but their private life was collapsing. Their business was failing. Their children had grown careless, entitled, and wasteful. The money they once stole and protected had thinned. Their debts were growing teeth. Auntie Ngozi heard the name Nwosu Crown International often. She admired the company without knowing she was admiring the child she destroyed. She told her friends that whoever owned Nwosu Crown must have been born under a lucky star. The audience knew the truth. Amaka was not born lucky. She was forged. The Korean connection entered through a business proposal. Nwosu Crown International was invited into a major shipping and private security partnership in South Korea. The deal was large enough to change the company's Asian presence. Amaka's board advised caution, because several companies involved had unclear ownership structures. Then Amaka saw a name buried inside the documents: Black Han River Holdings. The room seemed to tilt. Years disappeared. She was a child again, standing outside Uncle Emeka's study, listening to men discuss documents she was never supposed to understand. She opened the private safe in her office and removed the torn piece of paper she had carried since the night she ran away. The name matched. For years, she had built power because she never wanted to be helpless again. But now, power had brought her back to the first mystery of her life: her parents. Amaka decided to go to South Korea personally. Her advisors objected. They told her the deal could be handled by representatives. They reminded her that her anonymity protected her. They warned her that Black Han River Holdings had dangerous connections. Amaka listened, then closed the folder. She said some ghosts did not answer representatives. When her private jet landed in Seoul, she stepped into a city of glass, cold air, hidden danger, and secrets waiting beneath polished lights. She believed she was there to investigate a company. She did not know she was about to save the life of the most feared Mafia king in Korea. Episode 8. The Mafia King and the Detective. Kang Tae-jun was not the loudest man in Seoul's underworld. That was why people feared him. He ruled with control. He did not waste words. He did not drink himself foolish. He did not threaten unless he meant to act. Men twice his age lowered their voices when he entered a room, because Tae-jun had built power from discipline, not chaos. His organization controlled clubs, private security fronts, debt networks, and underground negotiations that powerful people pretended not to know existed. But Tae-jun had rules. He hated unnecessary cruelty. He punished betrayal quickly. He had no patience for men who harmed children or abused women. This did not make him innocent. It made him complicated. His enemy was Detective Seo Min-jae, a brilliant officer who had spent years trying to bring him down. Min-jae was respected in the police force because he was patient, sharp, and difficult to corrupt. He believed criminals like Tae-jun built kingdoms where the law was afraid to enter. But Min-jae was also tired. Too many cases disappeared when powerful names appeared. Too many victims were told to wait. Too many monsters wore clean suits and donated to charity. Tae-jun and Min-jae hated each other because each saw the other as a threat. Tae-jun believed Min-jae was a stubborn man hiding behind a badge. Min-jae believed Tae-jun was a criminal pretending to have principles. Neither knew that Amaka would soon force them into the same war. Amaka arrived in Seoul under her public identity, Amaka Nwosu. She attended a private dinner at a luxury hotel where executives connected to the shipping deal gathered. Tae-jun was in the same hotel for a separate underworld negotiation. Detective Min-jae's team watched from a surveillance unit nearby, hoping the meeting would expose Tae-jun's network. The hotel looked perfect. Too perfect. Amaka noticed the first problem before dessert. A waiter's shoes did not match the staff uniform. The emergency exit near the east hallway had been locked from the outside. 2 cameras had been adjusted slightly away from the service corridor. A flower arrangement near the elevator blocked the reflection from a mirror. A delivery cart marked for linens sat too heavily on its wheels. Her body remembered danger before anyone screamed. She warned hotel security. The man smiled politely and told her to enjoy her dinner. His tone was familiar. It was the tone of people who believed a woman's concern was an interruption. Amaka stopped explaining. She stood and began moving. Across the hotel, Tae-jun sat in a private room with men who had already betrayed him. His right hand, Jun Park, sensed something was wrong but could not identify it fast enough. Tae-jun looked calm, but his eyes moved once toward the door. Then the lights flickered. Gunfire shattered the glass. The attack was planned from inside. Tae-jun's guards were divided. The emergency exits were blocked. Smoke filled the room. Men shouted. People ran. Detective Min-jae's surveillance team lost 2 camera angles at once. Amaka moved through the chaos like she had been born inside it. She reached Tae-jun seconds before the second shooter fired from the service corridor. She grabbed his arm and pulled him down. The bullet broke the glass behind him. Tae-jun reacted by twisting toward her, ready to strike whoever touched him. But Amaka locked his wrist and hissed at him to move unless he wanted to die as an arrogant man in an expensive suit. For 1 second, Tae-jun forgot the bullets. No one spoke to him like that. Then another shot came, and he followed her. Amaka led him through the kitchen, using heat, smoke, and confusion as cover. When a shooter blocked the exit, she threw hot oil toward his face and drove her elbow into his throat, as Baba Stone had taught her years ago. Tae-jun watched with stunned interest as this unknown Nigerian woman fought with precision, not panic. Outside, an explosion tore through part of the hotel's upper floor. Detective Min-jae saw Amaka pull Tae-jun into a service alley through restored surveillance footage. She moved like a trained fighter, but not like police. She noticed cameras like a criminal, but protected lives like someone who understood victims. Min-jae leaned closer to the screen and asked who she was. No one knew. In the alley, Tae-jun tried to question Amaka. He asked if she knew who he was. She looked at the blood on his sleeve, then at the burning hotel, then back at him. She told him he was a man who would be dead if she cared less. Before he could answer, her security car arrived. She entered without asking his permission, without requesting thanks, without fear. Tae-jun watched the car disappear. For the first time in years, he looked unsettled. He told Jun to find her. Detective Min-jae gave the same order from the police side. And Amaka, sitting silently in the back of her car, opened her phone and stared at the company documents again. The assassination attempt was not random. One of the shell companies connected to the hotel meeting had ties to Black Han River Holdings. The name from her childhood had followed her into gunfire. Episode 9. The Debt of a Dangerous Man. Kang Tae-jun did not find Amaka easily. That was the first thing that impressed him. Most people in his world left trails because they wanted to be seen. Money, fear, pride, and ego made people careless. But Amaka's identity was buried beneath layers of corporate structures, legal protections, private security systems, and deliberate misdirection. The woman who saved him was listed publicly as Amaka Nwosu, a senior executive. But nothing about her felt like an employee. Her security moved around her like she was the center of a kingdom. Her staff obeyed before she finished speaking. Her silence carried ownership. Tae-jun finally arranged a meeting through business channels. Amaka agreed because she also needed answers. They met in a private room overlooking Seoul at night. Tae-jun arrived with June. Amaka arrived with only one assistant and no visible fear. Tae-jun studied her the way dangerous men study weapons they do not yet understand. He offered repayment, money, protection, access in Korea, a favor from his organization. Amaka rejected all of it. She told him a debt from a Mafia king was not a gift. It was a chain. Tae-jun smiled slightly, not because he was amused, but because he respected the answer. He was used to people wanting something from him. Fear made people obedient. Greed made people predictable. Amaka was neither afraid nor greedy. He asked what she wanted. She asked about Black Han River Holdings. The room changed. Tae-jun's face did not show fear, but his silence became heavier. He said the name belonged to a network that moved between legal business and organized crime. It was the kind of company that powerful people used when they wanted distance from dirty work. Even in the underworld, some names were spoken carefully. Before Tae-jun could say more, Detective Seo Min-jae entered the story from the other side. Min-jae requested an official interview with Amaka about the hotel attack. She accepted, but on her terms. He expected arrogance because of her wealth. Instead, he found restraint. She answered only what she chose to answer. She did not lie carelessly. She did not over-explain. That made him more suspicious. He asked how she noticed the assassination before trained security. Amaka said training was not always done in uniform. Min-jae asked if she had connections to Tae-jun. She said she had pulled a man out of bullets, not married his crimes. Min-jae watched her closely. He saw intelligence, pain, and secrecy. He also saw something he did not expect. Anger that was not wild but controlled. After the interview, Min-jae began investigating her background. He discovered that Amaka Nwosu, a Nigerian girl, had disappeared years ago after leaving her relative's home. He found fragments, an orphaned child, no formal school records after her parents' death, relatives who claimed she had become wayward, no clear public history for several years. Then, years later, Amaka Nwosu appeared in business circles connected to Nwosu Crown International. The missing girl and the powerful executive were the same person. Min-jae did not yet know how she had crossed that distance, but he wanted to. Meanwhile, Amaka's own investigation moved faster. Her private team traced shell companies linked to Black Han River Holdings. Some were connected to shipping routes between Nigeria and Korea. Some were tied to old land acquisitions. One archived document carried the name of her father, Chike Nwosu, as a person who had raised questions before his death. Amaka stared at the file for a long time. For years, she had blamed Uncle Emeka and Auntie Ngozi for stealing her childhood. Now she realized they may have been only the first door in a much larger house of secrets. That night, Someone sent a message to her private phone. Your parents should have stayed quiet. So should you. For one moment, Amaka's hand trembled. Then she placed the phone down and became still. The frightened child inside her had not disappeared. She was still there, still remembering the burial, the locked documents, the torn notebook, the rain. But the woman Amaka had become no longer ran from shadows without turning to study them. She contacted Taejun and Minjae separately with the same question. What do you know about Black Han River Holdings? Neither man trusted the other. Taejun did not want police near his business. Minjae did not want to work with a mafia boss. Amaka did not care about their pride. She told them both that the company was connected to the hotel attack, Korean organized crime, and her parents' deaths in Nigeria. For the first time, the Mafia king, the detective, and the Nigerian queen stood at the edge of the same enemy. Not together yet, but no longer separate. While this danger grew in Korea, another door opened in Nigeria. Uncle Emeka and Auntie Ngozi's business was collapsing. Their debts had become urgent. Their children had wasted money. Banks refused them. Old friends avoided them. The only company powerful enough to rescue them was Nwosu Crown International. They begged for a meeting with the mysterious owner. They did not know the owner was the child they had thrown away. When Amaka received the request, she read it twice. Then she agreed. Her assistant asked if she wanted someone else to handle it. Amaka said no. Some meetings had to be attended by the wound itself. Episode 10. The Queen Returns. Amaka returned to Nigeria with 2 wars inside her. One war belonged to the past. Uncle Emeka, Auntie Ngozi, the house without love, the denied school, the hunger, the beatings, the torn notebooks, the rain. The other war belonged to the truth. Black Han River Holdings, Korea, the assassination attempt, the message about her parents, and the possibility that everything she suffered began with a crime bigger than family cruelty. She landed in Lagos as the woman the world knew as Amaka Nwosu, senior executive of Nwosu Crown International. But inside her private circle, everyone knew the truth. She was the founder, the owner, the hidden power, the signature behind the empire. The meeting with Uncle Emeka and Auntie Ngozi was arranged in Nwosu Crown's Lagos headquarters. The building stood tall, glass shining in the sun, guarded by people trained to notice danger before it entered the door. Amaka arrived early. She entered the boardroom alone and stood at the head of the table. For a moment, the polished room disappeared from her mind. She saw the kitchen floor where she once slept. She heard Auntie Ngozi tearing her notebook. She heard Uncle Emeka telling a stranger that the girl knew nothing. She saw herself running into the rain with no shoes strong enough for the road. Her assistant entered softly and told her they had arrived. Amaka sat down. Uncle Emeka came in first, older now, but still carrying the fake dignity of a man who had lied for too long. Auntie Ngozi followed, dressed richly but nervously. Their confidence had been damaged by debt. Their eyes moved quickly around the room, measuring wealth, power, and possible mercy. They did not recognize her. That was the first punishment. To them, Amaka should have remained small in memory, bruised, hungry, barefoot, silent. The woman before them was too composed, too elegant, too powerful. Their minds could not connect the queen at the table to the child on the mat. Uncle Emeka greeted her respectfully and thanked her for agreeing to meet them. He called her Madam. Auntie Ngozi smiled too widely and said they had heard great things about Nwosu Crown International. Amaka listened. They explained their problem. Their company was failing. Their creditors were closing in. Their family name was at risk. They needed investment, restructuring, protection, and time. Uncle Emeka said they were good people who had fallen into bad circumstances. Auntie Ngozi said family businesses deserved to be saved because family was everything. At the word family, Amaka looked up. She asked Auntie Ngozi what family meant. Ngozi gave a practiced answer. She said family meant love, sacrifice, protection, and standing together in difficult times. Silence filled the room. Amaka opened a small box and placed 3 items on the table. Her mother's bracelet, her father's pen, the torn piece of paper carrying the name Black Han River Holdings. Auntie Ngozi's smile died first, her eyes fixed on the bracelet. Uncle Emeka leaned forward, confused at first, then afraid. Recognition did not come all at once. It came slowly, like a door opening into a room they had locked years ago. Amaka asked if they recognized the items. Neither answered. Then she said she was the child who slept on their floor. Auntie Ngozi whispered her name, Amaka. The name entered the room like judgment. Uncle Emeka tried to stand, but Amaka's security moved before he could take a step. He began speaking quickly, calling her his daughter, saying they thought she was dead, saying they searched, saying life had been difficult for everyone. Amaka's face remained calm, but her voice changed. She told him not to call her daughter. A daughter ate at the table. She ate leftovers. A daughter was sent to school. Her books were torn. A daughter was protected. She was beaten while he watched. Auntie Ngozi began crying. She said they made mistakes. She said she was grieving. She said she did not know better. She said Amaka should remember they were the only family she had left. Amaka looked at the woman who had turned her childhood into a punishment. She said a mistake was forgetting salt in soup. What they did was a childhood. The words broke the room. Uncle Emeka tried to shift blame. He said things were complicated after her parents died. He said powerful people came. He said there were documents he did not understand. He said he had been afraid. Amaka leaned forward. For the first time, her calm became dangerous. She asked about Black Han River Holdings. Uncle Emeka's mouth closed. That silence told her more than his lies. Before she could press further, her phone rang. The caller was Detective Seo Minjae. She answered without looking away from her uncle. Minjae's voice was tense. He told her there had been another attack in Korea. Taejun had survived, but the attackers left a message for her. Then he said the words that stopped time. Her parents' accident was not an accident. For 1 second, Amaka was no longer in the boardroom. She was back at the burial, small and confused, holding a bracelet while adults lied around her. Then the queen returned. She ended the call and looked at Uncle Emeka and Auntie Ngozi. Their tears no longer moved her. Their fear no longer softened her. Their need no longer had power over the child they once abandoned. She told them the season of begging was over. The season of truth had begun. Far away in Seoul, Kang Taejun stood in a warehouse, surrounded by the bodies of men who had tried to kill him. Blood marked his sleeve. June stood beside him, holding the message the attackers left behind. It was written in English. Tell the Nigerian woman her parents should have stayed quiet. Taejun read it twice. Until that moment, Amaka had been a mystery that fascinated him. Now she was becoming something more dangerous to his heart. A woman marked by enemies he understood too well. Detective Minjae stood outside the same warehouse, watching Taejun from behind police lines. For once, he did not move to arrest him. The attack was bigger than their private war. Someone was connecting Nigeria, Korea, corporate power, organized crime, and a death that had been buried for years. In Lagos, Amaka rose from the boardroom table. The people who once looked down on her were now beneath her power. But revenge was no longer enough. Her parents were calling from the grave through every hidden document, every company name, every attack, every lie. Season 1 ends with Amaka standing before the glass wall of her Lagos office, looking over the city she had returned to as a queen. Her voice is quiet, but final. She says, "I ran because I wanted to live. Now I return because the truth must."